Denial.
Once you're open to the possibility of black on white hostility all over the damn place, then it becomes very easy to see, just being open to it. But most of us aren't open to it. Because most non-black people, I'll just call them white people, most white people, they're so busy, we are so busy looking inside of ourselves for that one little tiny spark of racism. And if we see it, we dial 911, we get the fire hoses out, we hose it down. We stamp it out. Meanwhile, the fellas and their lovely ladies are not having that inner monologue about whether there's a little spark of racism. No, they have fully embraced the whole black on white hostility thing, and they don't even care who knows it. Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. I'm the author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Here on this podcast and in all my other platforms, we document this enormous level of black on white violence, black on young, black on old, black on gay, black on straight, black on Asian, black on Eskimos, black on Amish, black on Indian, black on kitties, puppies, turtles, goldfish. You get the picture. And how so many reporters and public officials and lots of other people are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. That's the greatest lie of our generation. That's the biggest hoax of our lifetime. We see it every day, but most people aren't even open to the possibility that it exists. I mean, that's why it's been allowed to grow and flourish into such an enormous object that we just look at it and go, well, I guess that's always been there. Hasn't it? I don't remember anything different. That's normal. What is that? Well, I don't know. It's just a thing. And we know, of course, Hillary Clinton was right. She was right when during the campaign, she used to tell people that, remember when she gave this line to Al Sharpton's National Action Network, she gave this line, she said, white people have to start listening to black people. Or we don't listen to them carefully enough. And the first time a lot of us hear that line, our reaction is, obscenity, expletive, deleted. But then when you think about it, Hillary is 100% correct. We're not listening to the fellas and their lovely ladies because they are screaming this hostility, antipathy. They're screaming at us every day. And when we hear it, we don't, we just process it into something else. We don't like white people. Oh, you want more integration? No, white people really suck. We don't want anything to do with you. Oh, you'd like more affirmative action? No, white people, you suck. We don't want to party with you. We don't want to work with you. We don't want to go to school with you. We don't want to go to church with you. We don't want to be buried with you. We don't want our kids to play together. Oh, you'd like more free stuff? Well, see what I can do. Thank you. I mean, we're just oblivious to it. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And more people look at it and go, hey, I think there's something really wrong with what I just saw. More and more people are opening their eyes and they're thinking they're the only ones that see it. No, a lot of people are seeing it, but a lot of people think they're just having some kind of temporary illusion. You're not having an illusion. It is real. Why don't we look at a couple of examples right now? I mean, it's real in the mainstream. And so we look in different places for the mainstream. Here's a column out of Yale University. Now, agreed, Yale University is not CNN, it's not MSNBC, but this is such a pure column packed with so much hostility. And this is a hostility, not just like for today, but this woman is basically declaring her intention to be hostile to white people for the rest of her life and to go around dogging white people, especially white people from Yale, and convict them for their imagined racial transgressions, even when they get to be 35, 40, 45, 50 years old. As you listen to parts of this column, imagine what a lot of people why Yale and Harvard and all these places are so attractive. They're attractive. Well, they get a lot of smart kids there. They have all these, institutions and institutional stuff that really helps people flourish. Maybe. Some people flourish under that enormous level of pressure and competition. But whatever else Harvard and Yale is, it is a place where you are going to meet the people who 5, 10, 20 years from now are going to be the people running this country. Whether they're senators or congressmen or CEOs or CFOs or editors of papers or columnists or TV stars, movie stars. That's Yale and Harvard and all the other lots of other Ivy League schools. That's the big appeal. That's why the parents like sending Johnny and Jimmy there. And they know if they can get their kid in there, the kid's going to be like a member of the rule, at least have the entrance card to get into the club, to the ruling elite of this country. But let's give a listen to Isis Davis Marks, where she just tosses all of that out in favor of doing the only thing she can do at Yale, which is study and talk about and document racial grievances, real and imaginary. So this is from just a couple days ago in the Yale Daily News. I love every inch of this column. Here it goes. Here's the beginning line. Everyone knows a white boy with shiny brown hair and a saccharine smile that conceals his great ambitions. He could be in Grand Strategy or the Yale Political Union. Maybe he's the editor-in-chief of the news. He takes classes. He networks. And when it comes time for graduation, he wins all the awards. One day I'll turn on the television, or who knows, maybe televisions will be obsolete by this point, and I'll see him sitting down for his Senate confirmation hearing. Yes, he'll be a bit older, with tiny wrinkles sprouting at the corners of his eyes and a couple of gray hairs jutting out of the top of his widow's peak. But that smile, that characteristic saccharine smile, will remain the same. While I'm watching the white boy, who is now a white man by this point on CNN, I'll remember a racist remark that he said, an unintentional utterance that he made when he had one drink too many at a frat party during sophomore year. I'll recall a message that he accidentally left open on a computer when he forgot to log out of iMessage, where he likened a woman's body part to a particularly large animal. I'll kick myself for forgetting to screenshot the evidence. And when I'm watching him smile that smile, I'll think I could have stopped it. And she goes on and on and on and on, talking about all these white guys that go to Yale and all they do all this bad crap. And just because they're white people and they all suck. And, she just goes, yeah, we got to start calling out more white people. And it just goes on and on like that. Here's the last line. I can't let things slip by. I'm watching you, white boy. And this time, I'm taking the screenshot. Wow. Doesn't this kind of recall some of the things we've talked about here before, that when a black person gets into Yale, when Isis Davis Marks gets into Yale, we know that the minute she hands in her application before they even read it, they've taken 250 SAT points and crammed them on top of that. And if they're anything like Harvard, they've given her an advantage over Asian people like Harvard does, by giving black students high marks, full marks, 100% grades for citizenship and character, and giving Asian students a 0 grade for that. That's how they put their thumb on the scales there. But when you get to a Yale or Harvard, it's hard to hide. When you go into an English class and you're asked to write a paper on some 17th century Renaissance poet, or you go into a math class and you're asked to do a little bit of calculus, this is just freshman year stuff, or physics, They're asking you to do the work. And so you have two choices when you go to a Yale and you're an Isis Davis Marks. One, you can take all those courses that you are not prepared for, you have no interest in. And you could flunk right out of Yale. Just as easy, you could flunk out just as easy as you flunked in. Or you can do what most of the fellas and their lovely ladies do when they go to a Yale and a Harvard on affirmative action admissions. You can study racial resentment for 4 years, and every single course that you take, every exam you take, every quiz you take, every conversation you're in, it always has one answer, one central theme, one focus, one way to get an A that nobody can challenge you on. And that is, black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything, especially here at Yale, where I am not acknowledged as the world's greatest scholar in the history of scholarly achievement. That's Isis Davis Marks. She's probably wondering why people kind of like look at her and wonder if she's up to snuff or not. She's a one-trick pony. If you read her columns, that's her trick. White people suck. Every once in a while, she takes a little left-hand turn and she says, oh yeah, men suck too. And that's it. And is there anybody at Yale that's going to stand up and go, hey, Isis, do you think you could broaden your perspective a little bit and learn something and contribute something to this campus other than your promise to be like a viper on our breast for the rest of our lives? We're all going to wonder if you're going to have a false memory 20 years from now and show up at somebody's office and go, oh yeah, Johnny Smith, that white boy, he was accused of fill in the blanks. And then do your morally superior tilt the chin up thing. Hey Isis Davis Marks, you ever hear of the Dunning-Kruger effect? It's when dumb people are too dumb to know that they're not morally and intellectually superior. It's called Dunning-Kruger. Look it up. You're the poster child of it now. And the point of talking about Isis Davis Marks is not that she's an outlier, is not that she's out there by herself, and it's not that we're sitting here saying, oh my God, what happened to the standards that they let Isis Davis Marks slip underneath the net? No, the point is, Isis Davis Marks is unremarkable. This is SOP on college campuses. It's been that way for a long time. Anybody that takes even the slightest interest in academia knows that. The people at campusreform.com are doing an unbelievable job at documenting all the crazy left-wing stuff, top to bottom, that happens on college campuses. Yeah, it's amazing anybody gets out of there learning anything. But ISIS isn't the only one going crazy this week. There's also a college called Dickinson College, where they have a column called "Should White Boys Still Be Allowed to Talk?" And that's by Lita Fisher, who's I guess she's probably ISIS's doppelganger. And she writes this big column, again, just a couple days ago, where she talks about American society tells men, but especially white men, that their opinions have merit and their voice is valuable. But after 4 years of listening to white boys in college, I am not so convinced. In my time at Dickinson, I have listened to probably hundreds of white boys talk. It feels incessant. From classes and lectures to news and politics, there is an endless line of white boys waiting to share their opinions on the state of feminism in America, whether the LGBTQ population finally has enough rights, the merits of capitalism. The list of what white boys think they are qualified to talk about is endless. Most white boys spout the narrative of dominant ideologies and pretend that they're hot takes instead of the same misleading garbage shoved down our throats by American institutions from birth. I am so goddamn tired of listening to white boys. I cannot describe to you how frustrating it is to be forced to listen to white boys explain his take on the black experience in the Obama era. Hey, Brian, I'm an actual black woman alive right now with a brain. In what world would your understanding of my life carry more weight than my understanding? Dunning-Kruger, full effect. Dunning-Kruger, Dunning-Kruger. Unfortunately, it is this world where white men debate the pain of other people for fun and then take away their rights. On and on and on. Her solution is let's stop white boys from talking. And so when you hear something like that, the first blush is, okay, it's kind of a joke, right? Remember the guy who wrote Gulliver's Travels, Jonathan Swift? He wrote an article called A Modest Proposal, where he proposed to cure the quote-unquote population problem of England, we should all start eating babies. And so but this is not one of these deals. I mean, I think this chick actually wants white guys not to talk for a long time so we could hear more representatives of the Dunning-Kruger class talk about what they're up to, which is mostly themselves. If there's any, if the Dunning-Kruger class has a favorite radio network, it has to be NPR. That actually might not be true, but let's just say it's true for a minute. But I think because one of the hallmarks of Dunning-Kruger is that they're so dumb they don't even know that they're dumb. That means, if you think you're really intellectually superior, you might not even be taking in any kind of new information. And in most cases, if you're taking in new information, that'll be the first information you've ever really taken in. But let's go back to Yale just for a minute. I was listening to this podcast called This American Life. They had two stories from Yale. I thought both of them were the most amazing things. One was about a couple of black women who went to Yale. Well, let's just pick up This American Life.
Act 3, Notes of a Native Daughter. Janet MacDonald had already learned the language. She'd already learned the culture, had French friends in a French apartment, when something happened that made her realize how much she hadn't figured out.
I was going to the movies with a friend of mine from Yale who is black also. And there was a long line. And we were like, let's jump the line. These white people, they're going to be scared of us. We'll just go and jump the line. We'll get to the front of the line. So, of course, you walked up to the front of the line like, yeah, you want to try me? I'm black. That usually works in New York. These people were ready to rip our hair out. And they were white. I couldn't believe it. They were like...
So that's the most popular NPR podcast / program. That's the most popular one. That's the big dog. And we hear these stories about these two black women from Yale who can't stand white people, who hate white people, who brag about hating white people, who brag about taking advantage of white people. And what does This American Life do? They pat them on the back for their self-discovery when they go to France and they learn that not all white people are stupid. Wow. This week in Yale, by the way, I did some videos on Yale this week involving Yale. I think I said it was in Bedford or something. Anyway, it's in New Haven, Connecticut. I knew that. We've done tons of stuff on Yale. In my books and in my videos, tons of stuff about how the fellas surrounding Yale are targeting Yale students and professors. Tons and tons of it. That's a dark and dangerous, dirty city. People who go to Yale know that. Anyway, this week, for Black History Month, they're having a big, it's one of these art installations combining dance and poetry and all kinds of other stuff that nobody really understands. But if you're a member of the Yale community, you're going to pay $50 to go sit down and, self-flagellate for a while. And it's all about white on black violence. good Lord. I mean, there is no white on black violence at Yale. Look at the Cleary reports. Look in the newspaper. Read my books. Watch my videos. Tons and tons of stuff out of New Haven. It's not happening there. And when the reverse happens, when we get black on white violence, which we get there all the time, the Yale newspaper, the New Haven newspaper just cannot go out of their way quickly enough to pretend it's not really happening. Man, I did this story for American Thinker magazine about, here's the headline, police respond to knockout threat. This was a couple years ago when everybody was writing about the knockout game. Good old Colin was the first one to really break the story. And here's what the Yale newspaper said. Yale students and New Haven residents are experiencing the arrival of a new crime pattern that has gained national attention, the knockout game. The game refers to attacks on pedestrians by groups of young adults. The assaulters approach the victims on public streets, hit them, and run away. There were 7 reported cases of street violence that could be linked to the knockout game. Okay, they forgot the central organizing feature of the knockout game. The perps are black. The victims are not. Get it? Perps black. Victims not. Now, I don't know if Erica Pandy, the person who wrote this story a couple years ago, we should, you know what? I'm not going to do it now. We'll do it next time. We should find out where Erica Pandy. I tell you what, if you're listening to this, you find out for us. Let us know. Erica, Erica Pandey. Wonder what she's up to now. I wonder what this journalistic giant, if writing stories like this that are transparently shallow to the point of being deceptive, does this really help your career? This was written 5.5 years ago. So does this help your career? Or does this guarantee you'll never get a job at a newspaper or a website? You know what? I'm going to stop this podcast now because this is too interesting. I'll be right back. See, all right, glad I looked. Because Erica Pandy minded her P's and Q's, she jumped from Yale to a place called Axios, which is, it's a big operation down in Washington, D.C. They used to be the people who started Politico, another big operation. They kind of had a falling out. So one of the guys, the starters and the editor, a guy named Mike Allen, whose family members, by the way, are big fans of stuff we do around here. I'm not sure Mike knows that, but anyway, they started Axios, and there's our aforementioned what the hell's her name? Pandy. That's her name, Pandy. There she is, working at Axios. She writes stories. They call her the future reporter. So she writes stories about shopping centers going down, online marketing going up, and Las Vegas being invaded by bots. And okay, well, whatever. But she didn't get that story right. That is for sure. And, there's a lot of ways to lie in a story, right? The most common way is not by printing something that isn't true. No, if you write something in a daily newspaper, there's a lot of people, that's what they do. They don't do the crossword puzzle. They read stories just so they can circle something and write a letter to the editor saying, no, that is not correct. The way to fib in a newspaper is just to leave something out. That's how reporters fib. The way editors fib is it's not that they're doing stories that aren't true. They're not doing the stories at all. And so in that knockout game story, that story wasn't true because she left out the central organizing feature of the game. Everybody involved was black. Sorry, Erica Pandy. At least she didn't threaten to stalk Yale graduates around for the next 50 years. And anytime anybody achieved some kind of modicum of success, to show up and start casting aspersions on them as an 18-year-old, 22-year-old college student. And remember, this ISIS person, remember, she's promising to stalk all of her fellow students around and remind everybody that they're a very bad person, that they're white and they're racist. Remember what the standards of racism are. Remember the symbolic racism test. We cover this a lot in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, but you've probably seen it before. They do these stories. You'll see a story like this a couple times a year. It's like, pick your favorite conservative topic. And they'll say, oh yeah, anybody who believes in this is a 72% chance they're a racist. And whether it's the Second Amendment, whether it's you don't like affirmative action, whether it's you believe in low taxes, whether you name it, a whole list of conservative things, all of them are racist because the way they determine racism, it's called the symbolic racism test. They ask you like 6 questions. It's questions like, do you believe that black people could get ahead if they worked harder? If you answer that yes, you get a little black mark in your score. You're going down the racism road. Do you believe that America is a place of opportunity where everybody can get ahead? Boom, done. And do you believe that black people get special treatment? If you say, oh yeah, it's not a belief. I can point out many places where they get special attention. Now you don't get to explain. If you say yes, boom. So there's 6 questions like that. If you answer them like some hyper-partisan liberal, you are a racist. Those are the standards now. Challenging any part of liberal orthodoxy you guys know that, especially racial orthodoxy, makes you a racist. There is no comeback. There is no dialogue. Oh, Colin, it's time for us to have a dialogue. I want to dialogue with you, Colin. No, you don't. You don't want to dialogue with me. You want to have a monologue and convince and do nothing but use racial expletives and cliches to try to intimidate people who disagree with you into not replying to you. That's a dialogue. That's what we call dialogue today. This week during one of my videos, I did a story about riots. I was going to put that segment in this podcast, but got too crowded too quickly. Maybe we'll do it. Maybe we'll do the next one. Anyway, there's a segment about riots, and we talked about how in Boston last week, after the New England Patriots won the Super Bowl, they had a parade, couple 100,000 people, and there was a video, 45 seconds long, of 5 to 10 white guys in their 20s. Some had their shirts off. They looked like they had either they naturally move in slow motion or they had a lot to drink. So they were basically having a scuffle, a bit of argy-bargy, a riot. And black people all over the country, I got 100 messages and emails on all my platforms and directly to me declaring that, oh yeah, Colin, did you see that? Bet you won't talk about that, Colin, because that's white people doing it too, Colin. And if you saw the video, and you can see the video on my different Facebook, minds.com, even YouTube, if you see the video, you can see what a disappointment this white riot was. There were no guns. There was no blood. There were no broken windows. There were no trash cans being thrown at cars. There were no police horses being smashed in the face with a brick. There were no cops being taunted, harassed, and attacked. It's just a couple of drunken guys rolling around, but it was a riot. I don't know why people are so afraid of using that word these days. Anyway, so it was a riot, and it was. If you look up their definition, you'll see what the definition of the word riot is, and that's what it was. And so what the trolls like to do, they don't really like to say that happened or didn't happen. They like to come in and say, hey, Colin, you said that guy was Hispanic. Well, I used my video ethnic tester, and he was only 61% Hispanic, and he was 39% Eskimo. So, Colin, you're wrong. So he was doing one of those on me. And when somebody does that on me, I'm not really that patient with it because, listen, we're doing life and death work here, okay? This is not a little semantical English class where we all bandy words around. At the end of the class, we all meet to play Scrabble in the class lunchroom. And so somebody came and said, Colin, that's not a riot. So I kind of jumped on him. I jumped on him pretty good. Anyway, it turns out he was like one of our big supporters. I wish I knew everybody's name. There's so many supporters here. I'm so grateful for everyone. I'm also grateful that a lot of people who support this channel, they know I can't take the time to thank everyone and give them the thanks that they deserve. Or else I've been doing nothing but thanking people all day and not making videos and not writing my books, not doing the columns. So I'm very grateful for everybody's forbearance, but this guy didn't want to do the forbearance thing. He kind of posted a comment, sent something to me, made me feel real bad. Said, hey, Colin, I've been contributing to you. Why did you do that? Well, I wasn't really, when I jump on somebody, I'm not really jumping on the person. This is for the wider audience. And for the wider audience, every once in a while, I like to remind people, let's keep our eyes on the prize. We don't need to let little distractions take us off what we're talking about. And when the trolls come in and try to play our little semantical games, we do not engage with the trolls. No, what we do is expose the trolls. We're not ever going to convince a troll to stop being a troll. But what I do is show people how to treat a troll. Again, we're not going, oh, I know you have a very valid viewpoint, and I know that we should have an open dialogue on this, and I'm very grateful. No, we're treating them to what we know they are, which are people that are coming to us in bad faith and denial, deceit, and delusion, and trying to perpetuate the greatest lie of our generation. We do not owe those people common courtesies. And so even if somebody like one of our friends, if they come in talking the way a troll talks, well, I just don't know what to say other than I'm not going to run, before I make a comment on somebody's stuff, I'm not going to run you through our big computer in the sky and print out your dossier. So I apologize in advance if I roughed up in the future, if I rough up any of our other great supporters. I just ask for your forgiveness and forbearance. And just remember, we got to be in this together because, man, every day it's something around here. Every day. It's not, it's every day there's something going on where there's some real prospect of somebody threatening to shut down some real important part of what we do. Whether it's the books, the videos, the podcast. You're going to hear a segment in a minute about something that happened on our podcast. You're listening to a podcast now. Spoiler alert. You're not listening to this on iTunes. My podcast was up on iTunes for years and years. It went down without a warning. Boom. Big bam boom. It's still up lots of places. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm okay. Let's get back to let's talk about getting your eyes off the prize. Let me get back to the prize. The first part of this podcast segment. I just want to remind you guys how common, how unremarkable this black on white hostility is. So unremarkable that black women can go to their college newspapers and spout this racial hostility. And not only is no one going to look at them out of the corner of their eye, the fisheye, they're going to get patted on the back for their bravery. And if you're of a certain age as I am, I don't really look at them, with scorn or anything. Probably not as much as I should. I really look at them with pity. That their whole life, they're getting ready to step into this thing called life, and all they have to shelter them, to use as a tool to go through life, to protect them from the slings and arrows, is this whole thing called racial resentment. They're one-trick ponies. At some point, the pony's going to run out of gas. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be today, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I don't know. But is that all you're going to have for the next 50 years? You're just going to go around incessantly looking for white racism? Occasionally in my travels, I'll go into a cigar store, smoke a cigar with the boys. Maybe I know them, maybe I don't. These cigar places are pretty collegial. You just go in, everybody goes, "Hey man, what's up?" So I was in one the other day, and it was not in the ghetto or anything like that, but it was mostly probably 8 people in there, 2 white guys, 6 black guys. I was just sitting in there, working on my computer, smoking a cigar, watching a little golf channel. But the fellows were talking about white racism. And that's like their favorite occupation in that place. I mean, that's it. I mean, they just love talking about white racism and all these normal everyday interactions that they have that are proof positive of white racism. That's it. I just don't think white people are quite aware of that, of this hostility that is expressed in this never-ending quest to identify you as a bad person and a big bad white racist. Are you aware of that? Are you aware that black people are not that into you? Do you know that? You probably do on some level, because when you get out of here, when you call up your little chickie and say, "Hey, would you like to go on a date? I heard there's a hot new barbecue place down on the east side." Yeah, we'll be the only white people in there. It'll be a lot of fun. Is that what you say? When you get up Sunday morning to go to church, do you head down to one of the gospel tabernacle choirs in the neighborhood, also containing the new barbecue joint? Do you send your kids to black schools? If you do, you're guilty of child abuse, because white kids are targets at black schools. So there's an enormous amount of this black on white hostility, and there's a lot of people who are aware of it, but they've kind of suppressed it. They kind of pretend that they're not suppressing it. Let's take a break for a minute, then we'll change topics and come back to some more media stuff. All right, I promised when I did these podcasts I was going to remind people of how they can support this channel, since my friends say I don't do enough of this on the videos. So I said, well, we got to give them some ways to support it. So you can, if you really want to support this channel, I have it, and you can go to colinflaherty.com, and there's 2 things you can do. One, there's a little tab up top. It says merch. Click on that. It'll take you to my Teespring page. Then you get all these cool coffee cups and t-shirts. Say denial, deceit, delusion, white girl bleed a lot. All these cups are pretty much safe for public consumption. Well, maybe the white girl bleed a lot is not, but the other ones are good. You can take them anywhere. But also it will identify you as being one of Colin's crew. That's a great way to support us here. Another way to support us is just the direct old-fashioned PayPal way. You'll see my PayPal account is paypal.me/Flaherty457, paypal.me/Flaherty457. And it is amazing when you look at all these reporters and all these news sites, everybody's scrambling for clicks, everybody's scrambling for viewers. That's the whole game. And that's fine by me. People have to write interesting stuff. But even as compelling as that is, there's just a lot of places that are absent from this whole news reporting spot of reporting the truth about black violence and criminality. There's a lot of blind spots out there. My favorite columnist, one of my favorite people on this planet, is Ann Coulter. Ann has written books about the whole black-white thing, good books. But every once in a while, she'll tweet something that gives her followers, like me anyway, kind of a curveball. Like the other night, she likes to remind people that we need a wall because Hispanics who come here don't need affirmative action because they were not the victims of historic racism like the fellas and lovely ladies. My term. And so Ann's quite happy to do whatever her version of reparations is, whether it's affirmative action, whether it's actual reparations, whether it's some kind of civil rights acknowledgement, whatever. She's okay with that. And in my travels, I let people know that all that stuff is just a deflection. It's an excuse. And it's really, in reality, it's the opposite, that black people are not victims of white racism. They are predators who are targeting white people for all sorts of hostility and violence. That's what we document here every day. And a lot of people will do anything to deflect from that. Maybe somebody will write something and say, oh, Colin, I've seen a lot of riots. That's not a riot. Okay, no, I'm not going to let you deflect from that, even if you're one of our friends. No, you don't get a pass. Hey, Colin, in Columbus, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. No, we're not going to do the history lesson here thing either. There are so many people who should be telling the truth very plainly about what is happening here, but they are not. I don't know why they're not. Ask them. But that's why it's even more urgent to support this channel through PayPal. I'm very grateful for everybody who has. And man, just keep it up because you guys are doing great. All right. We're gonna do a segment here on some really nasty business, but I did want to, since this podcast is about two things. It's not just about black dysfunction and black violence wildly out of proportion. It's also about the reporters, right? And how they can look at it and just turn away, or even keep looking at it and pretend something else entirely is happening there. And I think whenever we can get an insight into what these reporters are really like day to day, that really, even if it's not specifically about topic of black violence and dysfunction, I think that's worthwhile. So let's head over to the Daily Caller for a story they just ran Friday by a guy named Chuck Ross. Headline: Jake Tapper tore into irresponsible BuzzFeed editor for publishing the Steele dossier. And so BuzzFeed published this dossier and they were sued by some Russian guy mentioned in it. And because of this lawsuit, a lot of emails ended up in the public record. And so after we'll get more into this dossier in a minute. Anyway, so here's what Jake Tapper said to the editor of BuzzFeed. Jake Tapper, of course, is a CNN anchor that everybody had a lot of hope for. Disappointment. Quote, I think your move makes the story less serious and less credible. I think you damaged its impact. They're talking about the CNN story where CNN did a story about how Comey told Trump that this dossier existed and he just wanted Trump to know about it. Now, Comey knew a lot more about it, but he didn't tell Trump what he knew. But doing a story on a bogus dossier that you know is bogus, well, that's hard to justify. But doing a story on the FBI director telling the president about about this dossier, oh yeah, that's a full-on story. Let me just read a little bit more of this story. Lawyers for the Russian Alexei Gubarov picked out the Tapper-Smith exchange in hopes of showing BuzzFeed failed to do its due diligence before publishing the dossier, which was funded by the Democrats and compiled by former British spy Christopher Steele. Blah, blah, blah. But let's go back to Tapper. That was pretty uncollegial, not to mention irresponsible. No one has verified this stuff. And the editor of BuzzFeed replied back to Tapper, collegiality, and he said, hey man, I'm sorry, it was a tough call to make, but I published it. Then Tapper goes, collegiality-wise, it was you stepping on my dick. You could have waited till morning. What I thought was really interesting about this exchange, not about the specific issue, that CNN published a bogus story using bogus verification, using bogus pretense, just anything to put a little patina on this bogus story. No, I really thought it was important that Tapper and the editor of BuzzFeed, Smith, how Tapper and those guys, a lot of them think they're members of this club, this reporter club. I remember when my brother and I were doing a lot more talk radio at WDEL in Wilmington, Delaware. Once in a while, we'd get the reporters from the station on. We'd say, hey, just come in and sit down for a half hour so the people who listen here, they'd like to know who you are. So we had one of the reporters on, and we were talking about reporting, and she gave an answer. I had to stop her. I don't want to identify the person, but I had to stop her answer by saying, oh no, don't tell me you're one of these reporter who thinks that you actually work for this big reporter collective in the sky and your stories just happen to show up at this radio station. It could be any station. She kind of didn't answer, but a lot of reporters think that. They think they're a member of this secret society and they don't have any real obligation to their employer, but they have obligations to this secret society to present some version of the truth that everybody in this secret society has kind of agreed on. And in this case, they all agreed on how they were going to treat this dossier, but somehow the guy at BuzzFeed didn't get the message. That's how reporters think. I mean, isn't it amazing? I mean, if you owned whatever business, let's say you owned a football team. And this is probably a bad example since football is a monopoly, but you own a football team and your football players were going, hey, it doesn't really matter, man. We're not really members of the Eagles. We're just all football players. So let's just go out. It doesn't even matter who wins. I mean, is that the way these newspapers are running? Everybody's just kind of like reporting things without even a thought about who your competition is? Do you hear reporters talk about competition? No, they're all like, they're all in some, self-gratification circle jerk. They're all patting each other on the back for being geniuses. But when their story leaves these little circles, they just wither away. And that's how I think, this kind of insight into these reporters, knowing who they are, what they're like, it explains, how they can get away with being in denial, deceit, and delusion about this enormous level of black crime and dysfunction, and how they can report the opposite, that black people are really victims. And that explains everything about black people. I mean, if there is one thing that they agree on, I mean, that's like one of the basic tenets. It's like, oh yeah, we will not have any discussion on black victimization because everybody knows that explains everything. I mean, already we know that lots of reporters, including LA Times, Chuck Todd, Meet the Press, they have declared they're just not open to anybody talking about anything about any opposing viewpoints to global warming. I mean, that's it. We're done. We're done. There are societies called the National Association of Black Journalists. That's their job, to enforce this orthodoxy in every newsroom in America where they have one of their members. Like this ISIS chick. They are the function of the ISIS whenever there's a story involving the fellas or the lovely ladies. They are the ones that have to raise their eyebrow at the exact right moment to let everybody know. No, that you think you're seeing a pattern of black violence and criminality and dysfunction. No, that's not true, because what you're really seeing is a pattern of white racism forcing black people to do all this stuff. One of our more faithful viewers and listeners, True to Roof, but this really gets him going when you talk about the National Association of Black Journalists or any other journalist society really based on some kind of single interest, which is they're already telling us what they can and cannot report, will and will not report, will and will not let you know. But that's a strange reason to be a reporter. But for some of the people at Axios, I guess it's working. But that's why we're here, because this stuff just isn't being reported plainly anywhere else. I noticed there's a couple of more places on the web now that will take these stories of black violence and they'll just kind of put them up there without comment. Or when they comment on them, they'll use the euphemisms. We're at a point now where if you just post something and you dance around it, you might be doing more harm than good, because you're actually sending out two messages. One, you send out a message, yeah, this black dysfunction is an everyday thing. This black violence out of proportion is an everyday thing. But if you don't have the intestinal fortitude to put your foot down and speak plainly about it and call it what it is, then you're sending out a message that it's still taboo to talk about it. It's still dangerous to talk about it. People understand that. That's not a message that everybody has to receive. There are some people that can talk about this. Not everybody works in a cubicle. Not everybody is a teacher, a fireman, a cop. Not everybody has an HR person breathing down your neck, waiting for ISIS to come and rat you out. There are self-employed people. There are people who work from home. There are people who are retired, people who are independent. If you could speak out, we're going to count on you to speak out more. But if you can't speak out, support people like me who can speak out. All right, I'm going to take a break on this end. It's going to seem like 2 seconds when we come back, but let me take a break and we'll be back with some other stories. So the other day, I go to open up my iTunes, my Apple podcast app on my iPhone. I needed to check one of my recent podcasts, and it was gone. My podcasts were gone. Apple just took them down. I mean, the way it works is somebody just calls up Apple. They send Apple a message saying, hey, Colin Flaherty's a bad person. He's documenting black violence wildly out of proportion. And then he even goes around telling everybody that reporters and public officials and lots of other people are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. And since democracy dies in darkness, we cannot have Colin Flaherty going around saying bad things about reporters, how they completely screw up stories on racial violence. I mean, this morning I opened up the paper, opened up my web, and there's a big seminar at Yale University next couple of days at the dance show that's memorializing all the violence visited upon black people. Have you ever been to where Yale University is located in Connecticut? That is a dark and dangerous, dirty city. Every single person that goes to Yale, every single teacher, professor, medical student, medical professor, they know that. We've done tons of stories connected to Yale University. Black on white violence, black on Asian. Tons of black on Asian violence. Lots of Asian people wandering around the campus, on and off the campus. They are targets. And yet somebody at Yale, and lots of people at Yale look at that and go, you know what? It's really, we really got to do a story about how black people are victims of white violence. We got to do that. That's how sick they are. That's how twisted they are. Everything up is down, down is up, black is white, white is black. That's Yale University. That's the people at iTunes. And so so if you watch these videos, you know that. I know that, you know that, we know that, but this is how we are fighting that. We're fighting that by we're staying the course. I'm going to fight, there's still lots of places to get my podcasts, by the way. I now get my podcast at iHeartRadio, or you can get them at Stitcher. Lots and lots of places, podcast directories where you just go in and you enter my name, Colin Flaherty, White Girl Bleed a Lot podcast. And bingo, bango, boongo, you subscribe and it'll come whenever I release them. I'm going to start doing more podcasts. But this is our life. Our life is fighting this, resisting this, drawing attention to the greatest lie of our generation. And every time you feel like stopping, you probably feel like stopping watching these the way I feel like stop making them sometimes. We come across a batch of stories like this, sent to me in just one day. I mean, there's probably another half dozen out there I just haven't had time to get to. Last couple days, people send me these things. Black on white murder.
The wife of murdered pawn shop owner Brandon McCann spoke with THV 11 only after the murder suspects appear in public.
They had their first court dates this morning in Jefferson County. THV 11's Erica Ferrando was in the courtroom today.
Daryl Strickland and Rodney Henry, both 21 years old from Camden, are being held without bond in the Jefferson County Jail. Today, Brandon McCann's family saw them face to face for their first court appearance.
It was very hard to see them in that room, but it was more mad than sad. But in a way, just to see the small two human beings that took my husband's life is just ridiculous. It's a life for nothing.
Sitting in the front row of the courtroom, Miranda McCann watched as the two men police arrested for killing her husband faced the judge where no bond was set.
That's exactly what we wanted, and I praise God every day. Thank you. And Brandon, we're praying for you every day, baby, and we love you. Love you.
Brandon McCann was shot and killed November 12th while working in the Pine Bluff pawn shop he owned. After allegedly killing McCann, Daryl Strickland and Rodney Henry are accused of robbing a Pine Bluff gas station an hour later.
I would just like to thank everybody possible to bring this case closed. This happened really fast.
Strickland admitted involvement in the murder. He told detectives their intention was to rob each location for cash. Henry denied involvement to detectives.
Here's a story somebody sent me a day or so ago saying, Colin, how did we miss this one? Black guy goes into a gas station in Jeffersonville, Kentucky, kills the owner. Bing, bam, boom. Who gives a damn? This happened a couple weeks ago near York, Pennsylvania. Guy goes into the gas station, robbed it, killed somebody. He didn't feel like leaving witnesses. What's up, my brother, Mark Ellis? Why'd you kill that guy, Mark Ellis? Why'd you kill Sonny Arnott? He was just a guy trying to make a living. Got up every morning, went to work, paid his bills. Took care of his family. Now he's dead. And you're not. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's why we're going to keep doing these videos. Okay, here's one just happened in Cleveland. Store clerk shot to death in shootout at liquor store in Cleveland's Glenville neighborhood. Okay, this is what we call East Cleveland. This is the black part of town. This is Indian country, no man's land, no-go zone. Especially if you're white, especially if you are a business owner. Whenever I think of this part of Cleveland, I think of that the 40-something-year-old couple. They owned a car dealership, a small car dealership, one of these places that, it looks like a gas station, but it was an old gas station. They converted it to have maybe 15, 20, 25 cars on the lot. They started calling the cops going, hey, we're under attack here every day. We are under attack. Cops didn't do anything. The news people came out. The lady goes, listen, we're under attack. It's like, they were like a block or two from the formal boundary of East Cleveland. She's going, we're under attack. They won't do anything. We're in danger here. A couple weeks later, even before that TV station had a chance to air that clip, a couple of fellas came in, killed them, stole a car. That's East Cleveland. If you go to Cleveland, you talk to people about Cleveland and their town, which I did during the Republican National Convention. Everybody likes it. They like it up there. They're very excited about Cleveland. But then if you go, hey, what about all the argy-bargy over in East Cleveland? They go, oh, no, that's not Cleveland. No, that's not Cleveland. What are you talking about, Colin? It's not Cleveland. That has nothing to do with us. The denial, deceit, and delusion runs deep among the boosters. Okay, here's another one. Kelso murder suspects. A couple of fellas shot this chick. I mean, you think if you knew more details about what actually happened, how it happened recently, do you think if you knew more about it, that would help you understand it? Same with this one. Police release new surveillance image of one of the men sought in the killing of BPAM's food market worker, Stacy Childress. Second verse, same as the first. 10th verse, same as the first. Here's a story out of Rio Linda, which I think is in California. This fella got all pissed off at an 85-year-old man who parked too close to him. So he went up and punched him in the face. He got 10 years. 10 years. That's all he got. I don't even think they charged him with murder. I think they charged him with something like, assaulting a person over 65. Punched in the face, the guy falls down, breaks his head, dies. 10 years. Wow. Why don't we just finish up with this one? For no other reason. It's not like we're finished with the stories. It's just like, no, I'm kind of just finished with them for now. Because when I go back to my email later on this afternoon, we're going to have a ton more of these. So at some point, we just have to stop and say, hey, let's just stop here. 4 men are charged in the murder of a store clerk in Southwest Houston.
Johnson, just one of 4 suspects accused of killing the 66-year-old clerk at Sonny's Food Mart last weekend.
Earlier this afternoon, 3 other suspects tied to the same crime made their first court appearances. Eyewitness News reporter Marla Carter is following this still developing story and tells us that these suspects may also be tied to other robberies.
Hafiz Qureshi was a father of 5, a grandfather, and beloved in his community.
And so now people at Apple, they want to take my iTunes podcast down, which they did, which you can still get lots of other places. They think that's going to help if we stop calling attention to this Holocaust out there. And so this is kind of a reminder for you what role you play in this whole process. This is a reminder for you, if you are in a position to like these, share these, tell your friends about them, send them an email. That's what you have to do. Get on my email list. Go to colinflaherty.com and sign up for my email list. You'll see how to do it when you get there. There are people, no matter what else happens, if we are connected through email, we can stay connected. But one day somebody in Apple just snaps their fingers and the podcast is gone. I'd like to think all of our other stuff is secure, but that's not the way this world is working now. If this stuff's important to you, if exposing the greatest lie of our generation is important to you, get over there, sign up for my email. Sign up for the podcast. Drop a few pennies in my PayPal cup.
Please, sir. I want some more.
They're not mad at us because we're wrong. Good, how easy would it be to show I'm wrong? This would be the easiest channel on the planet to shut down with facts, if they existed. Here, Colin. Here's 5 videos. Here's 5 stories in the last year of people, white guys going into convenience stores and killing the clerks in there. Yeah, Colin. See? White people do it too, Colin. We never get that, though, do we? We never get that. Today, somebody is, lots and lots of trolls, their favorite thing to do is to send stories. And I always know what the stories are going to send before they send them to me. They go, Colin, what about this? I look at the story. It's 1919. Yeah, 100 years old story. What about that, Colin? You said this doesn't happen. 1919. And it's all part of some divine retribution for something that may or may not have happened in 1919. And the weird thing is the same people who say there's nothing happening today, there is no black on white violence today, there is no tsunami of black violence and white denial today. The same people who say that, they're the same people who are writing articles about what happened in 1919 or 1944 or 1955. And so it's really hard to find an honest broker for any of this information, historical information. So that's why I don't like doing causes and solutions around here, because one step away from causes and solutions, there's always this long, convoluted discussion about history, and and we get to the point where I have to ask, because something bad happened to Emmett Till in 1955, that's why you went out and killed that white guy in the year 2019. And there's so much of it going on. Okay, we just heard that little segment I put together a couple days ago. Actually, just yesterday I finished putting it together. And I knew this was going to happen. As soon as I was done, as soon as I put it away, I start getting more stories. Like this story about a white kid who thought he was a rapper, who wanted to buy some pot from the fellas. Let's see what happened to him. Say hello to Alex Tisdale. He called himself Young Beast. He wanted to be a rapper. He wanted to be part of the culture. He wanted to be a hip-hop dude. That's why he felt he could call up one of his fellas by the name of Glover and say, "Hey, my man, come on down my crib. Bring some pot. I will give you some money." The fella said, "I'll be right down." Pulled into his driveway, pulled out a gun, and he shot the young beast dead.
Several friends and family members of the victim were in bond court today and were very emotional when Glover walked through the doors. The judge reminded Glover of his rights and talked him through the bond court process. Half the room was filled with family members and friends of the 17-year-old victim who was found shot to death in his driveway. The judge gave Glover the opportunity to speak, but he did not have anything to say. The victim's mother said she's scared for the safety of her other children, and the father had a message for other parents.
I love my son, and if you love your son, I think that you should get more involved in their lives. Make sure you know exactly where they're at and what they're doing. Monitor their Facebook. Simple things that would have saved my son's life could save yours.
So this is what the father was talking about. The kid's Facebook page is all about the rap, the drugs, the guns, the money, the bitches, the graveyards.
Please, sir, I want some more.
Nobody wanted to say anything about how corrosive and destructive that culture is. So how many people are paying with their silence with their own lives? How many people are paying for their denial with their own lives, their own safety? Let's go to a couple more stories that came in under the transom. 2 old white dudes in a safe space. One is alive. One is dead.
He was walking home just around 8 at night when 3 men seemed to come out of nowhere, ambushing him. None of his neighbors saw it happen and no one got a good look at them, but thankfully, these cameras did. You can see it all for yourself. He's on the phone with a friend on his way home. One of 3 men comes out from behind an SUV parked on the road, grabs him, tries to take his phone. Another throws him down, pushes him against a trash can, and punches him. He kicks, yells.
They were trying to get my phone. I was on my phone.
And all 3 take off, empty-handed.
Try to protect your life is all you do, basically. I'm glad they didn't have a weapon. They were looking for somebody. You got to be on guard all the time.
But no one expects something like this, let alone in a family neighborhood. But he told us that's why his story is an important one to share.
It's happening in the area more and more. Crime is not going down in this area at all. No, it's going up.
And around 1 this afternoon, police and the U.S. Marshals were able to arrest Crony Lloyd of Cleveland. Now, Independence Police Chief Michael Kelbane said the arrest of Crony Lloyd came just days after 83-year-old Gary Power was assaulted after getting out of his car at a gas station around 1:30 a.m. Sunday. Now, police say Power was punched and knocked to the ground. He died the next day.
Is anyone detecting a pattern here?
Please, sir. I want some more.
Pattern not just of violence and robbery and murder, but the underlying pattern of hostility against white people, of hostility and targeting vulnerable people, crimes of the worst kind. Is anybody detecting a pattern here? The central organizing feature of the pattern. Yeah, well, it's glaring, it's shouting, it's jumping out at us. Look, I know how bleak these stories are, one after another after another. There's no way to tell these stories except put them out there very plainly. White people are targets for black people. But if there is a bright spot, I can tell you that not all white people are targets. Some just refuse to be a target, like these people.
Don't do the crime if you can't do the time.
You heard the man. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time.
The case was a little more complicated than they thought because the mom was acquainted with one of the alleged home invaders. In this dramatic 911 call, you hear a man tell the operator he just shot 2 people in his house on West Court. 2 men, deputies say, who were trying to pull off a home invasion.
The person that had the vehicle is dead in my bed. The other one rested on his foot because he couldn't.
Deputies say when it was over, 20-year-old Alvin Smalls was found shot to death in the house, and 18-year-old Amar Lynn, who took off running after he was shot, died not far away. Neighbors say a woman and her son live here, and when the 2 men pulled up, it sounded like a friendly visit. One neighbor, who does not want to be identified, says the mom was talking to them.
They got out of the car, went up and started talking with her. She got out of the car and was really distraught over some very small, minimal raise that she received at work.
But after the 2 men got inside the house, deputies say things got violent. Investigators say one man had a gun, but so did the woman's son. And by the time it was all over, both men, Alvin Smalls and Amar Lynn, were dead.
Yeah, my mom jumped over it. Couldn't stop it.
Okay, which way did he go? Which way did he go?
I don't know. I was worried about my mom. Okay. One of them's dead. The other one, I shot him once.
So we don't know much about the people who shot the fellas in self-defense. It's funny, one of the other papers in the area doing a story on this said the fellas who were shot...
Please, sir. I want some more.
While trying to rob the house, they were the victims. See how easy it is to flip the script? And I just did another story. You can catch it over at minds.com or any of my other platforms. Another guy in North Carolina. Somebody said, hey man, somebody's in your mom's house. This is a guy in his 50s. He gets to his mom's house, pulls up in a car, there's fellas inside. He yells at them, come out of the house. Oh yeah, did I mention he had a gun? Yeah, they paid attention to him. They came out of the house, hands up, then they got down on their hands and knees. This guy's on 911. He's holding these 3 fellas at bay on the ground, describing how had they made a move at him, it would not have turned out well for them. So people are figuring it out. They're taking more responsibility. They're opening their eyes up to the possibility that they might be targets for violence, vandalism, robbery, rape, murder. Let's finish up with this story. I don't really, on these podcasts and in my books and stuff, videos, I don't really feel the need to pile on every latest outrage or get involved in every latest discussion of something even peripherally to do with race. Just try to stick to my lane and, go from there. But there's some stuff going on about the lieutenant governor of Virginia. His name's Fairfax. Remember, the governor's the guy that is accused of wearing blackface or a Klan mask in his yearbook And the attorney general, the next in line after the vice president, he did the same thing. Everybody down there is doing this, I guess. But a couple of lovely ladies stepped up and they said, yeah, 25, 30 years ago when this guy was a young man, he raped me. Two black women came forward and said that. But it just reminded me of the stories we've done around here over the last couple months about black women being raped and the enormous pressure on black women from black people, men and women, not to report, not to go to the cops when they are sexually assaulted by a black man. Huffington Post did a story on it, and they have a quote that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. Black women are trained to protect the race at all costs. If you're a black chick, that means you got to do your part for the cause. And why would you want to turn that brother in? Because the world's already too much for the brother. The white people are already keeping him down. Why do you want to be a part of that? Yeah, that's the speech. That's the talk they get. They get it from the college deacon or the community organizer or the local minister or their black studies professor. Enormous pressure not to report. So this guy raped, the women said he raped two people, 20 some years ago. They never said a thing. But if you're a person, if everybody's okay with that, if black women are okay with letting rapists walk among them, whether they're the victim of it or whether their sister are or next door neighbor or their cousin or whatever, if everybody knows you can be a rapist and not get reported if you are black, I mean, do we expect them to get upset if a black person's going around killing a white kid because he wants to rob him during a pot deal? Do you notice anybody getting upset or pissed off? No. They've already made their deal with the devil. If you can look somebody in the eye and go, officer, I did not see anybody go into my next door neighbor's house last night when that rape happened. I did not see it. Officer, I do not know who grabbed that woman and dragged her into the alley. I don't know. Think about the level of denial, deceit, and delusion you have to be in to participate in that kind of scam on any level, whether you're the victim or whether you're the person going to the victim, telling her to shut up if she wants to be true to her race and protect the race. How sick is that? It's just a sign of the sickness that's infecting a lot of people in this country. It's a sign of the sickness that's infecting people who write idiotic articles for Yale University about how they're going to stalk their white classmates for the rest of their lives. Because they know inside, because if you're black at Yale, you have these mind-reading capacities. So you're going to stalk him and accuse him of stuff wherever they go. Does that seem mentally healthy to you? Does it seem healthy that you could write that and then have somebody publish it? Is that what we do now? We just publish stuff? If a black person writes it, you just put your palms up and shrug and go, hey, whatever, man, we got to give the sisters a voice. Is that the way we roll now? There is no editing function other than iTunes, YouTube, Google, Facebook, Twitter, other than every other platform on the planet, going around looking for transgressions real and imagined against the liberal orthodoxy, which will justify them getting kicked off the platform. How many people were suspended from Twitter this week because they were going, learn to code? They were telling reporters, go out and get a real job. People were getting suspended from Twitter for that. And this chick writes a column for Yale News, and everybody pats her on the back and says, "Oh yeah, you're really going to have a great life ahead of you." You know, this racial resentment that fires somebody that is on fire inside of you, that's really going to guarantee you a way to get a mate. It's really going to inspire you the way you have children. It's going to inspire you when you walk into the workforce, or you're just going to be a very pleasant, nice person for the rest of your life. And all because you've dedicated your entire life to the proposition that no one, for any reason, can ever make the black kids angry.